Hi, I'm Jack Draper. Shout out to QualityShot Tennis.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. We will get a new Rome champion on the ATP side for the Masters 1000 tournament. It's Holger Rune versus Daniil Medvedev. Both players looking to win their first clay court Masters 1000 title, and a lot of people wouldn't have thought Daniil Medvedev would be in the final. A lot of people, of course, saying that he is really a hardcore specialist, and he said it himself, and that he's probably no good on clay, but he is proving people wrong this year so far. He's been pretty good on the red dirt. For Holger Rune, it's a chance for him to correct maybe something that he would have hoped to have overcome, which was that Monte Carlo loss in that final against Andrei Rublev, where he probably should have gone to win it. He was a breakup in the deciding set. In this match now, he'll go into potentially a slight favourite, but we'll talk about that a bit more in a bit. Before we get into it, though, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you are new, and also to leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Okay, let's get into this then. It is the last tournament before Roland Garros, so this is a really good indicator to see where people are going to be at going into the Grand Slam tournament. And not many people would have picked Daniil Medvedev as a real serious contender for Roland Garros. But if he were to win this final, I do think you have to talk about it. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to necessarily win it. He wouldn't be my pick even if he was to win against Holger Rune, in my opinion. But he needs to be in the conversation if he beats Holger Rune, because Rune is in the conversation. People are talking about Rune being in the conversation with Djokovic and Alcaraz. So if Medvedev beats him, it's only right that he's in there. And if he beats him in Rome, it would be his first Masters 1000 title on clay. But not only that, Rome plays very similarly to Roland Garros. So there's a lot of similarities there. And the stats tell you that if you progress far and you go deep in Rome, then most likely you will also do the same at Roland Garros. It's not a given, but the percentage or the chances are that you most likely will. So how are we going to break this down then? So we're going to do what we normally do, which is mainly go through three factors when predicting and previewing this final. First of all, we're going to go through their matches that they've played so far in the tournament, how they've looked, and also who they faced. Then we'll talk about the head-to-head matches that they've played in the past and whether they're relevant or not, and how they've played out, and also how that could have a bearing on this match. And then ultimately, I will give you guys my prediction. But before I do that, we'll break it down technically and tactically from a more strategic point of view, looking about how the match might play out in the end. And then that's how I'll come to my ultimate conclusion, which I know you guys are burning to hear, of course, what my prediction is going to be for this final. And disclaimer, my predictions can be hit and miss, so don't always take what I say as gospel. Okay, so let's go through their runs to the final, or their route to the final so far. You can see here Rune beat a couple of really good players, to be fair. Fields, Fognini in straight sets, Popyrin in 3. Djokovic was the most notable one, of course, beating him in 3 sets, and then beat Casper Ruud. Now, this was a bit of a great escape, in all honesty. He was a set and a breakdown. Was Holger Rune. He came back to win in 3 sets. Casper Ruud definitely, in my opinion, as soon as Rune broke back and got it back onto serve in that second set, I think he almost mentally checked out a little bit. Was a bit disheartened by it. And the opposite can be said and holds true for Holger Rune, who's got very strong mental fortitude from what I've seen of him in the past, and in the past year anyway. So a good victory over Casper Ruud, who actually had a 4-0 head-to-head record going into that. Rune is starting to reverse that deficit, or reduce that deficit in that head-to-head. For Medvedev, he's faced some good opponents himself. Ruusuvuori was a really good win. Then Zapata Morales in 3 sets. Zverev in straight sets, who we know can play on the clay, of course. Hanfman in straight sets. And then the most impressive one, in my opinion, Stefanos Tsitsipas, the former Roland Garros finalist in 2021. He's also made the final of Rome last year. And, of course, he's won clay court tournaments. And it's arguably his best surface. So he's a player who not only enjoys the clay, but has won tournaments. He's won Monte Carlo twice. He's gone deep in all the other tournaments. He's won Barcelona before, so he's someone who is definitely looking to go on to win Roland Garros at some point, if not this year. He's confident. I know when we were talking in the past about Stefanos Tsitsipas, they sat down and did, who do you think is going to win this clay court tournament? And Tsitsipas was saying himself in every single one: Monte Carlo, Madrid, Rome, Roland Garros. He was like, you know what my answer is, which means himself. So he'll be disappointed to lose to Medvedev, but this was a really good match to give us a real indicator of where Medvedev's clay court game is at, because Zverev is a good win, yes, but this isn't the Zverev that maybe was playing last year at Roland Garros. This is the Zverev who's come up from injury and is lacking a bit of confidence and maybe a little bit of assertiveness in his play. And Medvedev's made some tweaks playing on the clay, and I wasn't sure whether it would pay dividends against the elite guys or the top guys on clay, but Tsitsipas is one of those guys, so that's a really good win. And to do it in straight sets as well impresses me even more. So fantastic victory on a very slow clay court, especially in wet conditions as well. To me, it's a real positive for Medvedev. The only difference in the final might be that if it's going to be in the daytime, whereas this match was in the night, the balls are going to bounce even higher. It's going to be slightly different in terms of conditions, especially if it's hot and humid and there's no rain around. Then that it is a different proposition. But he's shown on the clay that he definitely has the tools to be able to succeed to some degree. So that's their route to the finals for both players. Then in terms of the head-to-head, they've only played once before in Monte Carlo, which was this year, and Holger Rune came out on top, beat him 6-3, 6-4, which is, again, pretty comfortable. It was a good match. Holger Rune, as I said, is not arguably, he is more comfortable on the clay, no doubt. I think he really enjoys playing on the clay. I think he thinks that he can go deep in tournaments and has confidence that he can win them. And I don't think Medvedev had that in the past, but I think he's starting to get that. I really, really do. I think he's getting to that stage. So let's break this down then from a more technical standpoint. How does it play out? Well, let's talk about the serve and return dynamics first, because I think that's something that's really important. Medvedev has arguably one of the top 5 first serves in the world when it's on fire, though. I have to say on fire as a disclaimer, because it is not the most consistent. It can vary in terms of speeds, in terms of how he's feeling on the day, and for the most part, it's quite potent or very potent. But on other days, it can dip. Now, it's been pretty good. He's hit his spots quite well. He's got good variation on the clay. Can hit a good kicker serve as well, which is always important for Medvedev. So that's a real positive. And on the clay, one of the biggest positives for him would be that he loves standing far back. The courts, they give you that runway for one, and for two, it suits his return game because everyone's standing further back. It gives him a lot more time because of the slower surface, and I just feel like he's got a lot more time. Like, he hit a few return winners against Tsitsipas, including a winner to break in the opening game of the match, and is a forehand return winner. And I'm just thinking, I'm not sure on a hard court, does he have that much time to set up a forehand? He kind of swung back as well. It wasn't just a reactionary return, which you normally get. He's so far back, he has time to really wind it up and hit a proper ground stroke rather than an kind of very short backswing, almost no backswing return, where he's more deflecting it, trying to give the opponent less time by rushing them. So, look, I think the return part really, really does suit his game, being on clay, that is. And how does this serve hold up against Holger Rune? Well, Rune's been, a very good returner on the clay, and I think he's a good returner generally speaking anyway, but I think on the clay as well, he knows how to return effectively. He's not particularly weak on either side, backhand or forehand. It's pretty solid on both sides in terms of his returning ability. And he's able to hit the return in different ways, whether it's a block return, whether it's a more loopy, high coverage topspin return, whether it's a flatter ball at the feet of the opponent. Which is exactly what he was trying to do against Casper Ruud for the majority of the match and had success with, trying to rush him because he knows that Casper Ruud, or knew that Casper Ruud was going to try and hit a big forehand for the next shot, for that +1 shot. He tried to give him no room to be able to maneuver to hit it, which was clever. And so he's got different looks and different things that he can utilize on his return. For Medvedev, we're talking about Holger Rune's serve against Medvedev's return. I don't think Holger Rune is going to get a huge amount of free points. The one thing, or the one tactic, which Tsitsipas used against Medvedev but didn't have maybe as much success with as he would have liked, is the serve volley tactic, and also coming forward and transitioning a lot. Holger Rune likes to be at the net. The one thing I would say is that Holger Rune, he chooses his times to come to the net quite wisely and transitions nicely. So I do think that he will get some free points against Medvedev. But the biggest thing for me is the fact that Medvedev has this extra time on this surface. So if you're going to approach the net, you better make sure that either your serve or your approach shot is pinpoint enough that you get an easier volley, because if not, you're going to get a very awkward passing shot coming your way, which will be very hard to maneuver back into court. So something for Holger Rune to think about. Both these guys, really, their first serve percentages were very low in the semi-finals. I think both will look to try and boost that up because, as I said, both players are very good returners, different types of styles, but both work very effectively. And yeah, Holger Rune, I think his serve, I'm not expecting him to get a huge amount of free points or aces. I think there's going to be some longer rallies on his serve, which he had against Casper Ruud, who hammered away with his forehand for the first set and a half. Holger Rune weathered the storm and then came out strong in the last stretch. Can he do a similar thing to Medvedev? We'll see. We'll see whether that's the case, but I think he needs to adapt quite quickly to the way that Medvedev is playing and also his return ability. And the positive sign for Rune is that he played him not too long ago, a couple of months ago, and he beat him as well. Now, Medvedev has improved a little bit since then, you would say, but I do think Holger Rune will think, well, look, I've beaten him once, I'm going to beat him again. Now, in terms of ground stroke prowess and how that might look and how does it match up, forehand to forehand, I do think Holger Rune has a slightly more diverse forehand. Medvedev has definitely improved that side on the clay. He has different ways of hitting the forehand now, rather than just trying to hit very flat. He's got a higher coverage, more topspin forehand to lean upon on the clay at times, and he knows that's a real rallying shot that he needs to be utilizing quite frequently, and he does so. It's a more sort of whipped forehand with good height over the net, good topspin, and it just gives him a little bit more purchase on the surface, and similarly on the backhand side as well. And I've noticed that Medvedev is hitting with a lot of depth as well, or trying to, on those sides. And by hitting with more topspin and coverage, it gives you that extra margin to go for a bit more behind the ground strokes. So I think Medvedev, all in all, has been pretty happy with his form this tournament. And the forehand is definitely working a lot better than it did in the past. For Holger Rune, his forehand is pretty key. I think he needs to be, trying to dictate with that forehand side. And on top of that, his backhand is very pivotal as well. He needs to go line. He was very scared to go line in his previous match, Holger Rune, against Casper Ruud at the start. I think he can't be shy about it and needs to go line when he can, and also try and stick with Medvedev in the backhand to backhand rallies, because that's where it's going to get interesting. I think Medvedev has fantastic shot tolerance on that side, but actually so does Holger Rune. And can he keep up with him? We'll see. I was a little bit, not disheartened, but maybe surprised that Casper Ruud was able to stick with Holger Rune for pretty large periods of points on the backhand to backhand exchange. And, it was actually the fact that Holger Rune, in my opinion, his shot tolerance is very, very good, but is it better than Medvedev's? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it is. But if he is going to get dragged into that, then he needs to be creative, find shorter angles, try and drag Medvedev out, and then also go line when possible, because Holger Rune's backhand is very dependable for the most part, as is Medvedev. So that could be a real war of attrition. And I do think this is going to be a highly competitive match. I don't see this being dull at all. I think it's going to be very competitive, a real thrill to watch as well. And there's going to be some very long points, you'd imagine, as well. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the serve, the returning, the backhand to backhand, the forehand to forehand as well. Net play is also a really important factor. Holger Rune was a little bit hit and miss with the drop shot against Casper Ruud. He needs to make sure he's pinpointing against Medvedev, because Medvedev will get to them like Casper Ruud did, but with a second to spare because of his long reach, and he's very good in terms of his movement around the court, which again we'll touch upon in a second. But yeah, something to bear in mind. But I think Holger Rune needs to play it at the right time. He really does. I just think there's a chance that, if you're going to play the drop shot and it's not working, then do you just stick with it and say, well, this is what we worked in training, I need to practice it in a match situation? Or do you say something needs to change? I think Holger Rune persisted with it for as long as he could in that semi-final until he said something needs to change. I can hit it when, I've got a 90% chance of winning the point, but if it's only a 60% chance that I'm going to win the point, then maybe I don't take that route. So something interesting to bear in mind. Similarly for Daniil Medvedev, he was drop shotting against Tsitsipas, I saw as well. Some decent drop shots. He's not the most natural at it, but it's serviceable, it's working, and he's getting some free points off it. Okay, and then I think there's a few other factors to get into. I mean, shot tolerance is going to be a massive factor in this. Both guys are so good at defending. There's going to be some lung-busting rallies for sure. How's Medvedev going to feel after playing a late one against Tsitsipas? Rune, of course, has a little bit more time to recover, but he's had longer matches, generally speaking. So I think it could be a real war of attrition out there for sure. And I'm very intrigued to see how it goes. I think Rune needs to utilize the in-to-win forehand as well. Into Medvedev's forehand, also the into out, try and dictate. For Medvedev, he'll be looking to grind down Rune. He's been hitting with a lot more coverage, a lot more topspin, a lot more purpose through the court, and it's been great to see. So I think it's going to be a really evenly matched final, in my opinion. I think it's a 50-50 in all honesty. I think it's going to be a great watch. I think Medvedev will take great confidence from that Tsitsipas win. Rune, same for him against Ruud and also Djokovic. On that basis, and also how I think both players move on the clay, I think Medvedev still moves quite well on the clay, but nowhere near the level that Holger Rune does. I think Holger Rune will win, but in 3 sets. I think it'll be tight, but I think he wins in 3 sets. Let me know your prediction in the comment section below, and we will see you very, very soon. And we will be doing a live watch along for this match as well, so do make sure you check that out as well. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe and well. See you in the next video.